This meeting is being recorded.
The next section in Chapter 9 introduces us to the nomenclature or naming system of alkynes. So we'll see that it's very similar to nomenclature in Chapter 4, where we learned how to name alkanes, and we looked at nomenclature of alkenes recently. So now the only difference in our process will be that our parent, in step 1 here, will now include a CC triple bond instead of a double bond, or where we just looked for the longest chain in general. Now we have to include this triple bond. Step 2 will always be to identify and name our substituents. Then we have to assign a locant, a location, and prefix if necessary, and we'll look at examples of this in the practice problems. Giving this triple bond the lowest number possible, and to each substituent, right? So we want, in step 4 then, to name these substituents. So we number them, and then we will list them alphabetically. And we have to remember to ignore prefixes like di and tri when we alphabetize things. Only iso is the prefix used. So we know that our location, or our locant for our CC triple bond, we can place that either just before the parent name or just before the YNE suffix, like we saw with alkenes in double bonds. So let's take a look at some examples here. So again, we're just going to change some things in a minor fashion here, some minor modifications to include now the triple bond in our parent. So we can see with all single bonds, right, we just look for our longest chain, but when we are trying to name, like over here, we're trying to name an alkyne, we can't just choose the longest hydrocarbon chain, we have to include this triple bond. So this parent would be heptyne. So we have a prefix for 7. Our ending YNE is included because we have our triple bond. So step 2 we're going to look at would be to identify and name any substituents. And if we need to, we also have to assign locants or prefixes to each substituent. So we want this triple bond to have the lowest number possible. So in this situation here, we see if well, let's look at the right side first here. So if we number from right to left, our triple bond would be right here. It would be a 5-ine, this compound, when we name it. But over here on the left side, we see that we would have a 2-ine for our alkyne. And when we see that our locant is always going to be 1 number, not 2, we start with the lower of the 2 numbers when we number our carbons that this triple bond is between. So carbons 2 and 3, the triple bonds between them, but we use the 2 in our nomenclature. So the last 2 steps here, we would have our numbered substituents, so the locants are already applied. We would then alphabetize those, and again, we're going to ignore all the prefixes other than iso, and that's how we alphabetize. And then in the last step here, step 5, that's where we choose where we're going to put our triple bond locant, that, that 2-heptyne, that we mentioned earlier instead of the 5-heptyne. So it can go before the parent, or as you see in the second version of the name down here, the 2 is right before the ine. So let's work through and double check and see that we know how to name this compound here. So we number from left to right because we want our locant for our triple bond to be the lowest possible. Our substituents would be on carbon 5, we see 2 methyl groups, right? So we have 2 methyl here, but we also have on carbon 6. So we don't just have a dimethyl, we would end up collectively between the 2 carbons, 5 and 6, with trimethyl. of substituents. And then we have to give the numbers that all three of these methyl groups are on. So that's where the 5, 5, 6 trimethyl portion comes from. So again, it's very similar to nomenclature of alkanes and alkenes, but now we just have to describe where that triple bond is. So we also, in addition to our IUPAC nomenclature, we also have common names. So also common names. You may need to identify both of these, IUPAC or common name, on exams, on quizzes. So if common names are given here in the PowerPoints or in your textbook, you should know those. You're not expected to know anything that's not listed in your book. So some common names, we talked about acetylene earlier, and that's actually the common name. So the IUPAC name for that gas would be ethine. So we have the ethane parent for 2 carbons. But just like acetone, which is, a 2-carbon compound, right? We also have other common nomenclatures like acetylene. So ethyne is known as acetylene. We have some classifications here with this bullet point here that we should review. We have what's called in this first picture a terminal alkyne. So the triple bond is at a terminal point. It's at the end of the compound. So all we would have on this end would be a hydrogen bond. And then we have what's called an internal alkyne, and that just means that there are other alkyl groups, right, on the ends beyond the triple bond. So the triple bond is internal in this compound. It's inside. It's not on the end. So you can start practicing nomenclature, but I will make sure to walk us through some of the practice problems and how to name alkynes.